Welcome to My Daily Thread. It's a great little place to get a snippet of wisdom from the yoga and the meditation masters to start or to end your day. I'm Jeff Lichty. All right, everyone. Welcome to the show today. It is my distinct pleasure to bring you Eunice Peterson. She's a registered psychologist in Alberta where I teach my Ashtanga yoga program, and Eunice has been a student in our practice for like 7 years, and she's a great student. She's someone who always shows up, good days, bad days. That's the best kind of student for me. And so it took me a couple years to find out what Eunice actually did, and that she is a registered psychologist. But Eunice is always great when she's in the room, because she, with her great understanding of neurophysiology and how it affects bodies and how we move into postures, is helping me to adapt the way that I teach. Even just a simple thing for some of us. Eunice, when she started to do forearm stand, helped me with some new wording. And right, Eunice? I mean, this is great. Did I do the intro? Well, was that okay? Anyway, Eunice and I are we're gonna jump in.
You know what?
We Eunice is like I say, a registered psychologist in the province that I'm from, and one of the great things that we've done the last, I guess this will be our third year. We've done two years of this, of a trauma-informed yoga weekend workshop. And we've got another one coming up November the 8th. And so I thought, there's no better time than now to bring Eunice on to talk a little bit about trauma and the work that she does, and with her clients, some of her clients, and with me, as me as a yoga teacher, helping me learn to be a better teacher. So, anyways, welcome, Eunice. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're just going to jump in if you're okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my idea with this podcast today is, number one, introduce, my group or my listeners to you, but also to the idea of trauma. There's so much trauma speak in the world today that I feel like it's almost become one of those overused words, a little bit like, maybe like mindfulness became even like yoga, really. Like yoga, there was yoga for backs and yoga for golfers and yoga for athletes and yoga for whatever. And it seems now that there's like trauma for this and trauma informed this and trauma informed this. And it was a little bit like mindfulness, the same kind of idea that we would often have, we want to do mindful approach to, golfing or whatever it is, so a lot of these words, I think, get watered down a little bit in our culture. They get used to angle in on really an advertising component, really, or at least a presentation component, in order to sort of carve a niche for people, or maybe make clear. It's not a criticism by any means. It's just an observation of what happens with some of these words that we use in the yoga wellness world. So could we just start then with how would you define trauma? What do you define trauma as?
So the first statement I would use is that trauma is in the nervous system. So for all of us, depending on what an experience is, I'll give an example. So a number of years ago, there was that shooting in Las Vegas. And only a small portion of people who were present at that shooting will actually develop traumatic symptoms, or what we call traumatic symptoms. And so the event we would consider traumatic because it was a life-threatening event where people were exposed to life-threatening circumstances. But that is not a complete picture of what trauma can be. And eventually, when we say someone is traumatized, it's because there are a set of symptoms that have persisted or have become worse. You can't get a diagnosis of something like PTSD or complex PTSD following an event. There has to be a period of time that follows for the symptoms to build in their persistency to actually get a diagnosis.
So there's an event, but...
Or a series of events, like in developmental trauma or complex relational trauma.
Okay. And then really it comes to people's ability to cope with the event or the series of events? No,
because cope would imply intention or will.
Okay.
So when we're exposed to something that our nervous system registers as this is dangerous to me, it sets off a series of responses that are biological and neurochemical to create adaptive or protective responses in the moment. We don't have choice over that sequence of events. It's what the lower parts of the brain do based on whatever knowledge it has up until that point in time, like this is how I make mom or dad happy, or this is how I get away from a dangerous boyfriend. And so the brain is going to do its thing and set off this series of responses so that the person is able to move to some form of safety.
What are those responses? What are some of those responses?
Some of them could be adrenaline. Some of them could be a heightened orienting response. So if somebody's fallen, sometimes their eyes don't come back and work together because they are still trying to pay attention to where is the ice to make sure I don't ever fall again. Some of them can be sound. So they become super sensitive to sound and highly irritable to sound. Some can be a heightened state of arousal. Sometimes we'll call that anxiety, but it may not be anxiety. Some of them can be physical, so digestive issues or increased blood pressure, muscle tension, headaches. Depending on the person and their genetics, it can be very different across the spectrum.
But it still follows an event, correct?
It follows an event.
Right. Okay. And then how do you define traumatic events? Or it's just, we don't define any event as traumatic. It's only a response that we're seeing over time in the person who's experienced the event.
I may normalize an event as traumatic for a client. One, to check out, does that land for them? Because I want to make sure I'm using language that lands for them, because not everyone would use the word trauma. That's a very westernized word.
Okay.
And one of the things I'm going to be looking for is, are they aware that they have a set of symptoms? Because they may come in and just be generally dissatisfied. And then the other thing I'm going to be looking for is, was there a time that they associate with the development of the symptoms? And then we can go in a lot of different directions. If somebody's more cognitive in nature, their symptoms are probably going to be more on the thought spectrum. If they're more sensitive, they may be more emotional. If they're more physiological, they may have more psychosomatic symptoms. So the direction we can go in is going to be person specific of who's in front of me. So
someone will show up in your room or in your office, and they could be, it's like, I've got, I'm just tired of my kid. My kid is stressing me out. Yeah. And this can be from some event that has triggered a trauma response in the past, and they're experiencing it as, my kid is stressing me out. Is that accurate?
Yeah. If somebody has some experiences that left learned helplessness in their nervous system of, I don't have access to my agency or my ability to make choices to move myself to a satisfying outcome. And then they start to parent a child, and the child starts to challenge their parenting skills. It's not unusual that's going to light up the, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do and I'm not able to do it neural pathway.
And that neural pathway is, so that would be considered a trauma response?
It could be.
Wow.
If you've got a rate back there.
Right. Okay. Ooh. So is it fair to say that like you can't get out of this life without experiencing trauma then? Like everyone experiences trauma?
We can't escape our nervous system.
Ah, very good. Okay, I love this distinction. That's good. None of us can escape our nervous system. I think that is the best thing, because really managing our nervous system in complex situations, whatever they happen to be, call them whatever you want. Learning to manage your nervous system when you are when a situation arises in your life, that is common to everyone. Whereas this definition of trauma is really so fluid and so, I don't know.
It's hard to pin down because it's so varied. But if I can use how we came together today, when we first started chatting, your face was in what appeared to be more of a dorsal or a collapsed state where it was quite drawn, because we were trying to figure out this electronic world, and I don't know what had happened in your day before this. And so we figured out our electronics, and then we started chatting, and then you started to smile, and then you said, yeah, why don't we just start recording our conversation? But I was paying attention to you, and I'm like, yes, now we can start to record our conversation, because
you're managing my nervous system is what you're doing. I get it.
Because
and I've had a difficult month, and you know that, and in that difficult month, I go into what you call dorsal.
So in my head, I go, Jeff is in a dorsal response right now, like he is strained.
Okay, can you explain this? What are these responses? Explain this a little bit to the listeners, because this is what happens for those of you that are listening, this is what happens in our workshop weekends, is that Eunice will present something, and then I'll kind of be the guinea pig for the group, and like I'm in like some response of some sort, and then I'm kind of giggling away, or I respond, or I move back, or I like it looks like my boundary's been broken or something. We've had lots of different experiences.
Yeah, we have.
And then Eunice kind of manages me as she might a client, I guess. I don't know. In front of a whole group of teacher training students or workshop participants.
Right. But
and they get an idea about how the trauma thing works in the nervous system. Okay, good.
But it's so much better to introduce people to some of these, what would be called co-regulation, through relatively neutral circumstances. Like
these are big words. So explain co-regulation.
So I'll explain it. So when we have a group of students come in, and we get the opportunity and the privilege to present this information to them, I don't know their backgrounds. And by the end of the weekend, I'm probably not going to know their backgrounds, but I do make an assumption that they also have a nervous system that they couldn't escape, that started to formulate some protective patterns based on some lived experiences that are going to come into the room. And so if I can use an example like I just did of how we started today, where I logged on 10 minutes early, and we had a chance to sort out all of the bugs, and then we had a chance to kind of just touch base. And, as soon as I come on, I'm like, ooh, Jeff's face is looking a little tight. I'd seen the text in the yoga group earlier that he was late. So we need to get to a state of flow. So where there's hence I asked for the video, not just audio, so that when people hear us, they're going to hear the enthusiasm in our voice.
Right.
Because the tension that we showed up in the conversation with has now dissipated. We're in regulation. And so that exchange of some information and connecting in with our knowledge and our practice moved us to what we would call safety and connection. And this is co-regulation, where we use each other's nervous system and our knowledge about each other to get us to a place of flow.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And smiling is by far one of the best ways to do that.
Smiling and laughing. I couldn't agree with you more. It's like just get laughing about life a little bit, you know, and let's knock it off. Here we go. Okay. Well, so are you always regulating people? Are you always co-regulating people around you?
I hope so. I'm not always doing that because I'm normal and I go home and I'm with my husband and I'm with my kiddos and I'm with my dogs. But I've been doing this since 2003. Like, I got introduced to somatic work in psychotherapy very early in my career, which was such a blessing. And when I first heard it, it just made sense to me. So that was when Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory was just coming onto the sort of main stage, when Peter Levine's work was hitting the beginning of its momentum in a more international way. Gabor Mate had just put out Scattered Minds. Gordon Neufeld's book, Hold On to Your Kids, based on, creating that secure base for them. Right. So there's all these fabulous researchers who had this awareness of how the nervous system was working, and they were beginning to apply it into the field of psychotherapy. And I happened to get exposed to that. And I've just stayed in that lane since, because I find it really satisfying, partly from a professional perspective, but also from a living model. So I don't think I could stop paying attention to how am I doing on the inside if I try to, because it's just so well developed now, even though sometimes they scare me.
And is that what you call somatic work then? So can you define what you would consider somatic work? There's also a big movement in, somatic movement and somatic this, somatic that. Like, help me understand what is this? What are people meaning by somatic, and how is that helpful for regulation of a nervous system?
So I'm going to speak to it from my perspective, and that's based more on Alan Shore's research of the early development of the nervous system, which is called the right brain. So from in utero to the age 2 is the first real growth spurt of the brain, which is primarily in the right hemisphere. And so we call this right brain development, which is primarily subconscious. And then the left brain takes on its first major growth development at the end of the second year, based on what the brain scans are revealing. And so my perspective of somatic or somatic psychotherapy is bringing the subconscious conscious. Now, most of what I would do is an interplay between top-down or bottoms-up processing. Because I have some clients who are very dissociated from their bodies. So I would create a lot of frustration if I only focused on what is your body doing.
Okay, so explain then top-down versus bottom-up. What does that mean?
So top-down is considered neocortical functioning, so your executive functioning and thinking and assessing. So these things that we do every day in our daily life. But it's primarily neocortical. If you could see me right now, I'd be holding the top of my head. Whereas subconscious is midbrain and brainstem.
Midbrain and brainstem. Okay.
Yeah.
So midbrain and brainstem, then that's like, especially the brainstem, that's sort of that amygdala, that's the fight or flight system, really, like where we get activated, and that's where that.
And the amygdala is in the midbrain.
Okay. So brainstem and then amygdala in the midbrain. And then so that then is that's that sort of very ancient, maybe ancient part of our neurophysiology, the one that's like always on guard, looking for like the saber-toothed tiger. That's the thing that we
actually hear, I think it would not that we're going to play too many semantics, but I think it'd be more your thalamus. The thalamus is the brain structure that is screening for things, and if it senses it as threatening, then it sends it to the amygdala.
Okay, so bottom up means it's going from like that sensing of fear, danger up to higher level thinking. Is that right?
Yes.
That's bottom up is like going from I'm scared of this thing, I'm like reacting out of fear, to like I'm moving out of this to growing some more neurons, and like I'm actually thinking my way through this, and I'm like, okay, let's just take a breath, think this out. If I take a breath, this is what you would call bottom up processing. Is that right? So if I get scared, someone scares me, and I jump at the shadow in my house in the middle of the night, and and then I realize, oh, that's just my shadow. I'm okay as I think it through, and I'm like, I can go back to bed now. That's bottom up thinking. Is that like this is dumbed down to Jeff level?
Right. So bottom up processing is not necessarily thinking.
Okay.
So bottoms up processing is how information comes into your nervous system and contributes to some of these adaptive or maladaptive patterns that we call symptoms, so that we can communicate with each other when we're trying to help someone. And then we use our top-down processing, like awareness or mindfulness, to pay attention to them, to decide what do I want to do with them if we've been able to bring them conscious.
Okay, so is it fair to say then that we're always moving from up or bottoms up to top down processing? Like we're moving between those two all the time?
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, we want to, in a relatively integrated person, we want to have a state of flow, which is a movement between these.
Okay, state of flow. I like this state of flow thing. That's good. I like flow. And apparently if you smile, you get that state of flow better.
You do.
As you've said.
Yes.
I like that. That's great. Well, this is very interesting when we talk about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, because Patanjali talks about the chitta being those three things, like manas, that basically the recording faculty, that part that's going out and trying to gather information, and then the buddhi, or the intellect, which is that piece that's sort of processing it. This sounds a little bit like, bottoms up, top down processing in many ways, and then we add in the ahamkara, the ego, and how does this affect my ego sense somewhere in there as well. So it seems to me like there's some very loose correlation maybe between this the Yoga Sutra Chitta theory and what you're speaking about with bottoms up processing and top down processing.
Yeah, and I don't think I would use the term loose correlation. I think there's strong correlation, because these spiritual practices have existed for millennia, and they have practiced health long before we had the brain scans to say this is why it works.
Right.
So I think if we would, go into a number of different spirituality practices, we would see a number of these same patterns existing across the board.
Okay. Can I just, if then everyone is trying to manage their nervous system, in your personal practice, your life practice of yoga and just of life, and then also in your counseling practice, what would you recommend for people, just everyday normal people, maybe people who aren't even consciously struggling with their neuroprocessing? What are some things that you have found helpful, or maybe that you have asked your clients to do, or to start as a practice in order to help understand this system and then also help to regulate this nervous system?
Two that immediately come to mind, and I don't think this will sound jaw-dropping to your audience, is first the practice of gratitude.
Okay.
So our brains function based on the negativity bias. Right. The brain's first and foremost job is to keep you alive. So it tends to give a lot higher attention span to things that are negative, which that becomes part of the fear conditioning related to trauma symptoms. So the practice of something like gratitude requires our awareness to be monitoring ourselves, our interactions, our days in a way that it's noting, oh, this went well, or I'm very grateful for this. And then the additional layer I would attach to that is take 2 or 3 moments to notice how you experience that on the inside, whether that's in thoughts, whether that's in sensations, whether that's in emotions. So that deepening of the gratitude experience fulfills Hebb's law, which is what fires together wires together. So part of the practice of doing something is so that we are already in habit when something difficult comes along. It's not so that we won't have difficulty, but it's so that when difficulty comes along, we already have some of the resiliency and some of the habit that we can use things like state-dependent memory to lean back into that tells us, hey, I'm doing okay. And something like a practice of gratitude, which takes less than 3 minutes to do in a every day, is just has so many benefits. It has so many benefits. We don't have the time to really talk about that. The second one, which I think is congruent with yoga practice, is the setting of an intention. This is in Christian religions. This is in Sikh religions. That idea of what is my intention of how I want to be in the world. And this also helps us connect with things like the formation of moral conscience, which I think is the yamas in the 8 legs. So when we set intentions, we're again creating a state of awareness where we're observing ourselves. And so if somebody's rude to us in traffic and you have the habit of going, who's the person I want to be in the world today? How do I want to respond to this? It may keep you from giving them the finger.
Right.
Because you're setting an intention of how you want to behave in your day. And then if you have to, I'm just saying metaphorical things here. So if you have to go, let's say, to your in-laws for supper and there's tension in the relationship, but you've been practicing for 3 months, how do I want to be in the world? So you've been setting that intention. I would like to be practicing the virtue of curiosity. So then when I go to the in-laws place in the evening, and I've been practicing this for 3 months, I can now sit with likely a lot more presence. And instead of feeling defensive, I can notice the defensive response if mother-in-law says something that I don't really care for. And I could ask her a question about it instead of defending or explaining.
So gratitude and intentionality. Now, these two components then will be like a foundational practice that you could use to help set a foundation that will help you regulate your nervous system. Is that that's what you're saying, right? Now, how would you get a client to practice these? What would be the actual advice you would give to the client in order to practice, say, gratitude? Like what things would you say to them?
I would have them
like
practice.
A gratitude journal, or like
Jeff, in this moment, what have you noticed today that you've already been grateful for?
I was grateful that there was people in my class. I was grateful that my car started. I was grateful for my coffee this morning. I was grateful for a great breathwork session. I was grateful for like my meditation session.
Okay.
I was grateful that I was talking to my son, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Which one of those would you like to focus on?
You want me to focus on one of those right now? Mm-hmm. Oh. And here's what we do on our weekend workshops, everyone. Okay, which one am I going to focus on? Let me focus on my breathwork session, because after my wipeout on my mountain bike, where I thought on Monday that I had broken my ribs and I could hardly get off the mountain, and I was in the emerge for 3 hours. Like, let's talk about the breathwork session. I was grateful to be able to breathe. Yeah.
So as you bring that up, what are you noticing on the inside?
Well, I noticed that first off, I held the left side of my rib cage with my right hand. So there was that. But
that was self-care.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that beautiful moment of self-care where you just reach out and touch the injured spot.
Right. Sure. Okay.
Okay. And did you notice how you're just sliding by that?
That I'm sliding by that
sure.
I just slid by the self-care?
Yeah. Sure.
Oh.
It's no big deal.
Okay. All right. I grabbed a hold of my chest and I still have my hand on my fractured ribs. Okay.
So in this moment, I'm going to invite you to notice, what is the contact between your hand and your chest? How are you experiencing that on the inside? How does it feel to you?
It feels very warm underneath my hand, and it feels quite protective, deeper into my under my ribs, into my lungs maybe, and I feel like I can inhale a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
I'm safe to take a full inhale.
And so as you take a few breaths just now, I'm going to invite you to notice how your chest moves in relation to your hand, or what sensations you notice as you're just holding the space that was injured.
I definitely feel the warmth under my hand. I feel the slightest sort of gripping or twinge of pain at the upper end of an inhale, which makes sense because there's an injury. But I also feel the exhale. I feel the ability to soften my shoulders and soften my ribs and release even my jaw when I exhale. Okay.
Yeah. So. And I'm guessing this was different than Tuesday.
Yes, indeed it was. I mean, even Monday night, like I couldn't breathe properly for, probably 4.5, 5 hours from the time of the injury, the time of my accident, all the way through the emerge department, all the way out of that. And then, and then of course they gave me some good strong pain medication.
So can I interrupt you?
Oh, timeout. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just bring you back to this moment?
Yeah. Okay, please.
Yeah. And so are you still in contact with your hand on your ribs?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I just can't see that, just for the audiences. And so just bringing you back to the gratitude of how far your breath has come in 5 days.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And now I'm going to invite you to share what that gratitude is now.
I'm just thankful to be able to sit here and not be in pain, and to be able to have this conversation with you, and to then feel a fuller inhale and exhale. Yeah.
And
for sure.
If you had not been doing breath work through this last week, do you think you would have been as aware of your progress?
Would I have been as aware? No, I don't think so. I think probably not. I think because of this, I am able to understand the fullness of the breath today. Yes,
right.
That's true.
Right. And isn't your body amazing?
Yes, of course.
Right.
All right, but okay, great.
But notice your speed.
Okay.
Just notice the speed
with which I jump away from the gratitude and move into the future.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is that deepening. So do you see? So we use something again fairly neutral.
Okay.
Where you chose, we exercised your agency. We got you to choose what you wanted to work with.
Okay. Yeah.
And our intervention, though, was the practice of gratitude. But then through co-regulation, through my nervous system with your nervous system,
right,
we got you to deepen the experience of what does it mean to practice gratitude. Right. We built in some context. I stayed away from T0, which would have been the moment of the fall, as well as some of the other. Right. When you started to go down the rabbit hole, I'm like, oh, no, we're on a podcast. Let's not do that. Okay. Right. I don't need you to go there. And then you got to really sort of hold in your awareness of I'm getting better.
Right. Okay. Can we just talk about the rabbit hole though for 1 second?
Yeah.
What would have been going down the rabbit hole for you in that?
One, we haven't processed. Like this is the first time. I think you'd mentioned you'd had an accent in yoga class the other day, but you and I are not in a therapeutic relationship where I have the details. And so responsibly, I'm going to create a little bit of a container around this content because you were in front of an audience so that if you start to become dysregulated, you would not be in a position of being left open in front of your audience.
And dysregulated would mean something like I'm starting to get short of breath. I'm starting to look anxious. I'm starting to speak faster than I normally do. And I'm just shuffling past all the important parts. I'm not really answering the questions anymore. I'm moving into my own story. Would that be accurate? Like you kind of move into a story. I move into a story in my head that I've created and
if we're going to keep it,
I remember in the body.
If we're going to keep it linked into the somatic experience, so the body experience is you went into shock when you had the accident.
Right. Okay.
We always go into shock when we have an experience like that because it's a near-death experience to have a big fall on a bike. And the brain is going to do what it needs to do to keep you safe because your brain also knows I have to get off the mountain. Now,
of course,
in this circumstance, we're in a very shortened time frame. You have an audience watching as the professional or listening. As the professional caregiver, I have an obligation to you to keep this titrated in a way that's appropriate for this scenario. And so just like a yoga teacher, when we have an obligation or a responsibility to the people that we are working with, then we have to stay in our lane or in the lane that's appropriate for this situation. And we have to use our platform in a way that allows some healing to occur. So you got to connect with gratitude. You got to connect with how much healing you've had over the last 5 days. And this also was not the place where we're going to go into the details of the actual crash.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm determining at some level safety.
Got it. Okay. So this is not as simple as like the gratitude. I want you to write in your gratitude journal every morning, like 5 things you're grateful for. So when you're getting someone to appreciate gratitude in their life, how do they do this type of thing on their own without having Eunice in their pocket? Like I want Eunice in my ear anytime I experience some trauma, I'm like, I like when you help me regulate my nervous system. You've done it a few times in the last month. And it's like, I like that. Now, how does one do that on their own though?
There's a variety of ways that you can do it. Because when we are dysregulated, remember that bottoms up. So there's something occurring on the midbrain. It's likely been cued by something in the environment that we may or may not know about. We don't always know. We can have seasonal triggers. We can have situational triggers. We don't always know what stimulates the set of sensations that our brain goes, oh my goodness, I'm in danger. And in fact, we may not even be in danger. We might have just accidentally had a cue because the sun was in the right level of the sky at the right time, at the right season, in the right month when something happened when I was 21. So if we notice some dysregulation coming up and we have the time, this is where the practice of journaling, but specifically with some very specific questions. Because midbrain activity often needs to be organized. And what is so fantastic about using questions and having somebody write the answers down is, one, they can tear it up and throw it away. So nobody has to know. Because I personally am not an avid journaler. I've used it for very strategic purposes, but not in a way that people are going to find. But what happens when we use specific questions is our neocortex then has to interact with our midbrain. And when the midbrain has to organize to an answer, we start to make more and more connections between the two. Because if the midbrain lights up so if the fight or flight system lights up and it's having a bit of a circus, it actually hijacks the neocortex. So our access to the wisdom that we have as an adult may be unavailable. And we might be in a behavioral pattern of our 14-year-old self. Now, that is not my most mature self. I really don't want her running my show.
Right.
So I have a series of questions. It's about 5 questions that when I need, like if my anger has become too intense at one of my kids and I'm like, whoa, this is way too incongruent for them rolling their eyes at me, then that might be a time when I'm going to go sit. What is the emotion I'm having? Was there a time I've had this feeling before? Who was involved in what was that situation? Is that occurring now? Nope. Who is the person I want to be in this moment?
Right.
5 simple questions.
Those would be the 5 simple questions.
Yeah. And it sounds simple,
I'm going to write
effective.
those down. Yeah, I'll write those down after in the show notes.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, I'm going to get you to send those to me.
But then from the somatic perspective, or even from the yoga perspective, I might have somebody, because like we did with the gratitude piece, if you're sitting in my office and we're going to be working on one of these anxiety responses, and I've done this many times, we pull the paper and pen out and have people write them down. But then after each one, I'm having them check in, noting what's going on so that they can also see the transition as they're doing it. And we can slow down and observe ourselves when we're by ourselves.
So noting what's going on in my nervous system as I ask and answer each question individually. I pause in between. I take a pause. I give myself some space. I note the regulation. I know not even the regulation. I know what is going on in my nervous system. Then I move to the next question. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah.
If you're
I probably wouldn't use the word nervous system. I'd probably just say sensations or what's happening on the inside. So something pretty neutral, because the nervous system lingo, that's what's in my head. Most people are not going to use that.
Sure. Yeah, right, I don't think that's necessary to use it either, of course. Yeah. But just like how I'm feeling. I asked the question, now how do I feel?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I note that, and then you would ask the question, you write the answer, then note how you feel. Like pause and note how you feel. Then do the next one.
And if I can equate this back to Ashtanga, this is one of the reasons I have such a adoration of this practice of yoga, is you move into a pose and then you hold it for 5 breaths. So in those 5 breaths, you're noticing, what are the sensations in my body? Where am I holding on? Where do I direct my breath? What releases? You might come along and just touch, in between the shoulder blades, or on me, we tend to touch those muscles that are above my collarbones in the back. I don't know what they're called because I'm not that kind of biologist.
Right. Okay.
Right. Because you're always looking like, is Eunice holding her tension? And you can touch those, or I can sense you coming and I can now release them before you get there. Because there's
that
something
happens.
that cued you, wait a minute, I need to go check on that with Eunice, which is
Yes.
fantastic. But that's that deepening, which we do in practice when we hold poses. And sometimes I'll do a video at home and their flow. So we don't often stay in the pose long enough to be able to check and release.
Right. And I would add that when we go back to the Yoga Sutras and that very first sutra that says atta, it's like, now, atta yoga anushasanam. Now you're ready to study this yoga thing from the inside out, not from shasa, not from something being imposed from the outside in, which is basically every lead class that you ever go to. Someone tells you to do this, to do that, to whatever. And we're very often, I'm not saying you can't do it when you're in a lead class. Of course you can. But very often what happens in these scenarios is that I have to pay so much external attention to the teacher's voice or to what's going on or to what's being asked of me, to what movement, to what muscle, to what elbow, to what extension, all of it, that when I'm doing that, my mind is consistently being drawn outward as opposed to knowing that I move into this posture, now I hold it, now I can pay attention to something inside.
Yeah, because in the other one, you're task switching, and task switching takes more energy, and it's more difficult to move into a focus when you're constantly orienting to the teacher at the front. And don't get me wrong, I do like lead classes as well, and I will often do those at home online, just because of how my schedule aligns. But in the Ashtanga, because the learning the primary series, for example, becomes procedural memory, where I don't need to think about it. It's like hitting the brakes on the car. So I don't need to think about hitting the brakes on the car, and I don't need to think about after 5 sun salutations, then I go into B. I just know that, and what that protects me from is task switching. So my ability to be oriented to how am I doing in this moment, and every class is different depending on what's been going on in the background, or did I go mountain biking the day before. But so that internal focus of how am I doing is readily available. And then we get to play around with those edges of tension and release and check back into them once we're doing boat pose halfway through or 2/3 of the way through. And that interaction from the beginning of class to the end of class, I do really appreciate that, the procedural component, because of what it makes available to me. And then the practice of tracking your breath when you're counting for 5, if my very scattery brain tends to jump off into, oh my goodness, what client is coming in at 10:45 and am I ready for that one? The breath always brings me back.
Right. Oh, I could talk to you for hours. You know that whenever we get going, I'm like, I don't even know where to go now. It's like, I got to go here, I got to go there. But if people are in the Calgary area, what would you say your goal for our weekend is when we get together and we are presenting information on yoga and trauma and how they can interact?
My goal for people is just to know themselves a little bit better by the end of the weekend.
Know thyself. You're like Socrates. It's like, come on. It's like modern day, the woman version. Fantastic. I like it.
Right. It would be a novel experience because they probably haven't seen you and I ever work together. And even though some of the material will be probably familiar to them, experiencing it in a different format through a different lens always allows us to take it in a deeper way. And like I consistently listen to new people who teach the same thing that I've known, because I always learn a little bit more.
Right.
And then the other piece that I hold in my awareness when I'm working with people, which I think you also hold in your awareness, is that we help heal one nervous system at a time.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
So the persons in front of us are these beautiful, every person is fascinating. And we get the privilege, like people let us into their internal worlds. If you are helping adjust someone and leading somebody through doing physical things, because there is so much information that gets stored in our bodies. And so if that gets reinforced in the weekend, then I feel like I've done my job. And hopefully we've done it through a lot of laughter and practice and experiences that will deepen the learning.
That's exactly my wish as well. I like this a lot.
Yeah.
And now I'm getting even more excited. That's November 8th coming right up. So I'm looking forward to that weekend for sure. Just to cycle back to gratitude and intentionality, is there anything you would recommend? How do you recommend people proceed just in their day-to-day existence, going forward to try to draw more understanding of themselves?
I'm just going to say the first thing that came to mind is notice when something feels hard.
Okay.
Because the other thing I know from life, but oftentimes I reference things back to mountain biking because that's something I enjoy doing. I'm not terribly good at it, but I enjoy doing it. Is
I'm apparently not very good at it either these days. Oh my God. Okay.
Our brains tell us to stop long before we've reached our capacity. So when we start to feel resistance about something in our day, and we have to push beyond that little bit of resistance, those moments have a lot of richness in them to be curious about what's going on. Is this something I don't like to do? Am I tired today? Is this actually too big of an ask today? Do I need to ask for help? That's always a fun one, because many of us have been trained not to ask for help, be independent. And so when we explore those edges of, man, this is just feeling hard today, we have an opportunity to learn about ourselves. And then how do we help ourselves in that moment? Do we need to have some grit? Do we need to ask for some help? Do we need to build in some self-care? And now we start to have this encyclopedia of knowledge about ourselves. And we start to have these moments that we can reference. Have I felt this way before? What was going on?
Oh, I love that. I love that a lot. That's just this. Is it when it's hard? It's like, do I need to apply the grit? Do I need to become, more self-aware and do the self-care? And what was the third one? The third one was
probably
grit,
self-care, tap out,
right, and ask for help. Oh yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah, grit, ask for help, or self-care. Yeah, fantastic. Because
when we move into any one of those lanes, and I've just grabbed those lanes, I'm sure some of your listeners could probably come up with 3 or 4, if not more, options. But in that process, because what you can hear in there, Jeff, is when you're noticing, wow, I'm having a set of sensations. I don't want to do this anymore. Might be a thought, might be some resistance in our body. Now you have the awareness that's tracking it. Now you've got some executive function coming in and going, what's going on? Do I let this run my show? Maybe. Or maybe not.
Right. And then followed up with, who do you want to be?
Yeah. We link it back into those yamas of what is the morality that I'm working towards, or the virtue that I'm working towards. Yeah.
Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. And Aparigraha I've got coming up on the podcast. So
fantastic.
You guys can all look forward to that one coming soon. Okay. Well, I'm very conscious of the time, just knowing that you're with your family up north, and I want to be, considerate of that, and I'm very, very grateful that you would just take even 50 minutes with us to sort of tune us up a little bit on the trauma piece. I'm looking forward to our workshop together, And I'm looking forward to like you being back in the room whenever you
Yeah.
get back.
Yeah, I'll be back in 2
Back
weeks.
down south.
Like not this week, but next week.
Yeah, sounds great. Any parting words of wisdom you want to leave with the listeners?
Happy Thanksgiving. Right, we're on Thanksgiving weekend, so leaning into those things that you are finding very satisfying, and those relational moments that your body has, like that just letting go feel. Pay attention to these. They're so precious to take forward.
Absolutely.
Those moments of connection. Yeah.
All right. Eunice Peterson, everyone. That's Eunice giving us some great wisdom here today. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
You bet. Thank you for having me, Jeff. Okay.
And I know that some of that audio was a little bit tricky this week, so I appreciate your patience with that.
Okay, how did that go?
And we'll get back to the regular program soon. Boom. Peace out.
No, I couldn't hear any of it.